prosecutor, when I had a case, I charged it not in the name of the victim, but in the name of the people. For a simple reason. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. And I would often explain this to console survivors of crime, to remind them no one should be made to fight alone. We are all in this together. And every day in the courtroom, I stood proudly before a judge and I said 5 words: Kamala Harris for the people. And to be clear, my entire career, I've only had one client, the people. And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Vice President Kamala Harris accepting her party's nomination for president last night at the Democratic National Convention. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Friday, August 23rd. Along with Willie in Chicago at the DNC and Joe and me, we have the host of Way Too Early, White House Bureau Chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire. NBC News and MSNBC political analyst, former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill, president of the National Action Network and host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton,
what a speech.
Who spoke last night. It was incredible. We'll get to that. Also with us, professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude Jr., and Rogers Chair in the American Presidency at Vanderbilt University, historian John Meacham. So we begin. Your thoughts?
Let's begin. I thought that she did exactly what she had to do. I thought the convention went better than I've seen it go. And Willie, I must say that again, even in that line, that punchline right before you accept your party's nomination, she talked about the greatness of America. She talked about the very things that Republicans used to talk about until they started running down America, saying what a horrible country it was. Donald Trump saying what a failed country it was, what a nation in decline it was. She went there, and I thought, Willie, most importantly, the Democratic National Convention went there all week with chants of USA, with flags waving, with one speaker after another going on and on about how great America was and how this could only happen in the United States of America.
Yeah, in what Vice President Harris called in her speech the greatest country on earth. And you're right, Joe, being in this arena last night, the flags got bigger as the night went along. So everyone had a small flag in their hand to wave the speech, and then they brought out the big flags for Kamala Harris's speech, chants of USA, patriotism fully reclaimed, a focus on the military, on veterans also last night. And her speech was, this building has seen a lot, Joe and Mika. Michael Jordan won 3 championships in here. They've had some electric nights. But I would hazard to guess that this was right on par with some of those nights in terms of energy in the building, John Lemire. And you and I were watching. We got sort of the full scope from Section 315 up there. looking down at this tableau of a party that is truly been energized and in some ways over the last month or so transformed from its dread and despair that Joe Biden was too old and that they were going to lose to Donald Trump and how are we going to deal with this guy for another 4 years, to a party now at the end of this week that truly feels, not in an overconfident way, truly feels it now has the upper hand.
Yeah, we were up in the cheap seats, but it gave us a great view of just the diversity of the crowd, the energy of the crowd, and yes, the patriotism of the crowd. It was on full display. The red, white, and blue flags, later the red, white, and blue balloons. And this was an extraordinarily important moment for Vice President Harris. It was only a month ago that she was not here. Joe Biden was going to be the top of the ticket. And the way she has transformed this party, energized this party. And last night she set out to introduce herself in a real way to the American people. And she did so. She started with on her biography. She spoke very poetically, very movingly about her family, her mother, her community that raised her. Really, as you said, there was a real focus on national security last night, shoring up that part of her resume, sort of in some ways moving towards the middle, reassuring those voters. She flat out said she wanted to speak to some of the Americans who hadn't decided yet, who are not necessarily in her corner just yet. We heard from former Republicans last night, again denouncing Donald Trump. Harris, the former prosecutor, deemed him an unserious man, offered a preview of the scathing attack she'll deliver at the debate in just a few weeks' time. And then I found so striking that there was not a word of the historic nature of her candidacy, not a word about her gender or her race. It was simply, this is about the country. This is about the people in this country.
Claire, you've been saying for a long time, through all the hand-wringing about should Joe Biden stay or should he step aside? And part of the concern we all heard from Democrats, and I know you heard it too, was what comes next? Can Kamala Harris really do the job? Is Donald Trump going to wipe the floor with Kamala Harris? And you've been saying from the beginning, guys, I know her. I've worked with her. I've seen her. She can do it, and she will.
Yeah, I think she showed last night that she's ready to be president of the United States. And that was really the goal. The goal was to show the country that she's tough, that she's strong, that she's ready, that she's capable, that she has the experience and the qualifications. Should I confess now that the thing that I enjoyed the most about this convention, that it was so good at all the stuff that bug Donald Trump. The production values were off the charts. Everything looked great. The timing was seamless. There was no big drama anywhere. There were no tensions. We had more stars than he had. We have better ratings than he had. All the stuff that he thinks are important, they did really well this week, and I confess that kind of gives me a grin.
Well, and he desperately, after Vice President Harris's speech, was desperately calling into TV networks. Sometimes it appeared to be sitting on some of the keys on his phone while he spoke. Called Fox News. They kind of cut him off, then called into Newsmax. Rev, a point of personal privilege here. Lemire and I were watching upstairs, and there's no cheering in the press box. But when you came on, we had to. We had to cheer for Rev. Truly a stirring speech. And when you invoked Psalms at the end and talked about the joy and the joy that cometh in the morning, this place was filled with joy last night.
Well, I think the whole theme of the campaign and the Democratic Party's convention was that we want to get out of the darkness into the joy. So I wanted to have a biblical reference to it. And I think, as Claire said, that is the spirit you felt this week. I remember as a kid, I might have been 13 or 14, the 68 riots in Chicago. The contrast, you had protests here, but they were peaceful. There was some arrests, but no real violence. And people were every day saying there was going to be disturbance. There was joy here of all races, from all regions. And I think that that's what Kamala Harris has come to represent, which I think is a huge threat to Donald Trump. Because if you can choose between joy and disaster, you'll choose joy every time.
And joy and patriotism were combined in a way I heard Bill Bradley say yesterday. Joy and patriotism combined in a way that he has not seen since Ronald Reagan in 1984, Morning in America, when he took 49 states. I will say one correction, and really quickly, here we have the front of the New York Times and also the front of the Wall Street Journal. Harris makes her case to the nation. I will say one quick correction to the psalm that, or maybe a caveat to the psalm that the Rev said so powerfully yesterday. Joy cometh in the morning, unless you are a way too early host that has to wake up in Central Time Zone.
So I look that tired.
In Central Time Zone after staying up all night watching. Then joy had come a little later in the day.
When the nap comes, that's when my joy comes.
Poor guy. Yeah. All right.